Shankara Parvati Pati Mahadev Sri Shankara.
Namaste, it's Sahara Rose, and welcome back to the Highest Self podcast, a place where we discuss what makes you your soul's highest evolvement. This episode is brought to you by Ayurveda. Ayurveda is a modernized Ayurvedic supplement company that takes certain issues that we have, such as mood, joints, immunity, digestion, and creates these custom little packets exactly for us, infusing ancient Ayurvedic herbs with modern vitamins and minerals. I take the mood formula daily. It is great if you work a stressful job, had adrenal fatigue, ever suffer from anxiety or even depression. And it really heals you from a fundamental and holistic level. So if you want to try it out, head over to Youveda, YOUVEDA.com. Use the code Sahara and you'll receive 35% off your first order. And they now ship to almost every country globally. So check it out if you live internationally. They may be shipping to your country too. And they just added India, guys. So 2019 has been a major energetic shift for me, and I started to really download these memories I had living in this ancient civilization of Lemuria. And I'll do another podcast all about Lemuria, but it's pretty much this very feminine, feeling, intuitive-based civilization that now no longer exists because it's underwater. Some say it's in modern-day Kauai, and it is essentially the more feminine version of Atlantis, which was very marked by logic, science, math, discipline, very masculine, feminine. Lemuria was more feminine. So I'll do a whole other podcast about that, but that download started coming through. And then I started to go down this like rabbit hole of like mermaids and mystical beings. And then I was just, decided to write about them on my Instagram story. And I was like, okay, people are going to think I'm either fucking crazy or that this is really cool. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do me. I'm just going to put it out there and see what happens, see how people react. And that's what I did. And you guys are loving it, which has been so cool because it's like these topics of conversation that no one really talks about. Like, hello, are you a mermaid or unicorn or fairy or angel? Like, no one's talking about that stuff. And I know it's very weird, quote unquote, but we're here to be creatively different. Like that's why we've incarnated on this planet. We're not incarnate here to all be the exact same and talk about the same things and, have the same thoughts. We came here to be in touch with this mystical side of us. And even these concepts are not actually so foreign. Every single civilization has their own mystical creatures, whether they're elves and gnomes, whether they're water nymphs, mermaids, fairies, angels, all sorts of things. So if you ask a kid, oh, what's a fairy like? They'll tell you right away. But like us as adults, we've shut that part of our brains off. And then we're like, I don't know what's a fairy like. Like, I have no idea. Like, we're so cut off from just using our intuition that it can feel really weird and hard for us and out there and, doesn't fit in the matrix. But when you get more in touch with your intuitive side, you begin to notice the traits of these mystical beings in everyone that you meet. And that's when it gets really fun. And you know me, I love archetypes. I love, the doshas and the Michael Teachings archetypes and enneagrams and all sorts of if there's a quiz, I'm there. And this has been really fun because it's not based on any system that I've learned and I'm reteaching. It's just purely based on your own intuition. And there's no right or wrong answer. I'm purely speaking off of what is just downloading through me right now as I'm just on this wavelength, and you can too. We all have access to the same information. It is in our DNAs. It is in the Akashic records. It is just our intuition. So when I speak about these different beings, I'm not reading this from a book. There's no right or wrong answer. You may be looking at them in a totally different way, but what's really cool is we all collectively are able to kind of see the same traits in people, even if maybe we don't recognize them in ourselves. Sometimes it's actually the hardest thing to recognize these traits in ourselves because we know ourselves in all of our facets so much. But when you just look at someone else, that first instinct that you get is normally right on just what their soul's essence is. So I want to tap into what these mystical beings are, what these archetypes are, what they represent, and how to notice them in others, in yourself, and just get to know them deeper. It really helps when you meet people and you're like, oh, that person has elvish tendencies, or, oh, they're such an angel, but not just oh, they're sweet, but like actually embodying the angelic beings. Or they're such a fairy, an earth fairy, water fairy. They're such an alien. There's these different archetypes that we sometimes roll our eyes at and don't take seriously, but they actually provide us with a lot of information of what that person can be like. And I just love doing this stuff. I geek out on it. And I'm right now on my Instagram. I just put up a post of a mermaid. I was like, if anyone wants, I will channel what I think you are. And just hundreds of people who I've responded to, who you guys are responding to using your intuition. So it's super freaking exciting. And I'm just really passionate about this. It just kind of like came up really recently and it's fun for me. So the first question that I'd love to ask you is, what element do you connect with most? Is it the sea, the oceans? Like you just reminisce on a time that you were underwater. When you go snorkeling or scuba diving, you feel at home. Maybe you've always wanted to be a marine biologist. Maybe you just stare at the ocean waves for hours and hours. Like the ocean feels like home base for you. Or maybe it's the forest, just being amongst those tall trees and that moss and the vines, and you feel like you could live there forever. You love frolicking in the forest, finding the flowers, the herbs, finding all the medicine that the forest contains. That's really where you feel home. Or maybe it's by a fire, somewhere that it's like hot. Maybe it's the desert, or just somewhere that you really feel the heat in your body, and maybe you're connecting with actual fire. There's torches or a campfire, just really being with the fire or with the sun, like being able to stare at the sun for hours. You just love the sun. You want to merge with the sun. You have very strong solar energy. Maybe it's the sky, just looking up at those stars. You feel like that's where you came from. You could look at those stars forever and that feels like home for you. You love geeking out on documentaries about space and different planets, and you're really into astrology and you feel very, very connected to the cosmos. You're galactic. You're almost avant-garde, the way that you dress, the way that you think. It's like sometimes you feel like you're not even a human. So we have these different archetypes within us based off of the elements, and they're actually related to the doshas. If we look at the doshas, each dosha is related to 2 elements. So vata is air and space, pitta is fire and water, and kapha is earth and water. So oftentimes we only think of the dosha as one, and normally when I'm just teaching super basic level Ayurveda, like on a basic podcast that no one's heard of it, I'll just say air, fire, earth, but actually they have those 2 elements. So for example, as a pitta prakriti, my natural born constitution, I have a very solar personality. Like I am generally really positive, optimistic person. I'm bright, I'm cheerful, I'm bubbly, I'm playful. I'm almost like I'm on fire. I'm really passionate when I speak. I'm always doing things. I'm always busy. I love being in groups. I love being in front of stage. I love being part of tribes. So that's very solar. But at the same time, the other aspect of pitta is water. So I actually really yearn for the water. I really resonate with, and I'll share like my archetype, which is very mermaid. So I really resonate with underwater. I've always wanted to be a marine biologist, and I geek out on the ocean documentaries. And like for me, if I could go to outer space or like the bottom of the sea, I would choose the bottom of the sea any day. Like dolphins, beluga whales, any aquatic being is like my total jam. So with that pitta, I have the fire and the water. So vata, it's very cerebral. It's almost like that alien energy. It's very cosmic. So you'll see the vata people, they're very like stylish, like avant-garde. So I like to think of Anna Wintour, the founder of Vogue, or the editor-in-chief of Vogue. She's very almost like not even human. She's sharp. She's straight edge. Like she wears things that don't even make sense, but that's the whole point. It's art. Or I think of Lacey, which was called Free and Native, and she just changed the name to be Magnetic. But I think of her very alien energy. Danielle Page, who's been on this podcast, super alien energy. I mean, she's an astrologer. She literally reads the stars for a living. I also want to add that the ancient Egyptians were an alien race. And this is something that a lot of people have been able to see. I mean, we can't really confirm it, but we do see the hieroglyphics. Look up any Egyptian hieroglyphic and you'll see so many cerebral signs in there. Like you'll literally see spaceships coming down and the pharaohs picking them up. If you watch the movie The Zeitgeist, it really explains this. If you look at where the pyramids of Giza are located, they're always located to where different like star systems are aligned. So it's not like they were randomly put there. They were actually coordinated with the stars. So they're very alien-like people. And if Danielle's a good friend of mine, and she super resonates with the Egyptians, and she went to Egypt and really had a lot of past life realizations. And that is her being like the ancient Egyptian alien. Like that is totally freaking her. And if we look at like, what do we think of pharaohs as? They're very tall and lean and almost, again, they don't really look like humans. So I'll talk more about the celebrities in that, but I just want you to think Vata, very cosmic energy, airy, alien vibes. So I just want you to think right now if there's anyone in your life that has like alien vibes. I know my fiance is for sure an alien. He's actually been abducted while I was sleeping next to him. I'll share that story on another podcast, but he has a lot of alien energy to him. He works in electronic music. He loves to stay up all night and like just like make like music out of like not even instruments. Like instruments are more earthy, like to play a guitar or a drum. That's very earthy, but like electronic music is super out there and spacey. So that's his alienness. He loves anything alien, space related. Like I took him on his birthday to go to some museum about outer space, and he was like, oh my God, like, let's go. He's like, I will literally spend like anything to go on Richard Branson's like trip to Mars. I was like, you couldn't pay me enough to go eat friggin' space food for a month. Like no amount of Dippin' Dots are going to make me say yes to that experience. That sounds like absolute hell to not be near plants and water for like months on end. Like I would never want to do that. It's just a bunch of black space. It's not important to me. But do you see the difference to an alien? It's super important. So the Pitta is much more solar energy. So the Vata is a lunar energy. Lunar energies are much more emotional, reclusive, artistic inside themselves. They're sort of like, they separate themselves from the group and they want to like think and be. They're very, very sensitive too. So, for example, like Steven, my fiance, is definitely lunar energy to him. He really feels things. He's emotional. He's also a Scorpio, which, relates to all of that. So that's what the lunar energy looks like. But the solar energy, which is more related to Pitta, is much more out there, proud of who they are. They oftentimes are leaders because they're very confident and sure of themselves. And that makes other people look at them and be like, oh my God, you're so confident. I want some of that. And that's how they become leaders. So they have that king or queen energy and they just shine. They're not afraid of shining their light. And at the same time, they also are not afraid of confrontation. Like a lunar person something may happen and they want to think about it for a few days and they keep it to their heart. Maybe they have a really hard time expressing it. Maybe they hold on to it for weeks or months or years, or they never even share about it. Where solars are like, that was bothering me. Let's talk about it right now, like while it's happening, because I need to get through this. So you can see the difference there between lunar and solar energy. So the Pitta, more of that archetype. I think of shamanic energy. Shamanic work is very, very solar, fire-based, chanting, dancing, shaking. Do you see how in the body that is? With the cerebral stuff, it's super in the mind and like into non-duality, into that we don't even exist. It's like leaving the physical body. It's the Akasha. Whereas the solar energy is like getting really into the physical body, getting into the shadows and shaking them out, uplifting them into the light. So that's very somatic. So if you're interested in soma, body work, that sort of stuff, that is related to the Pitta solar energy. Now the Kapha energy, it's all about earth wisdom, listening to the trees, the plants, the ocean too, the water, all of that is related to earth. So Kapha energy is also related to water. It's earth and water, has more of an earthy influence, but it still has the water in there. So these are the people that they're very just bohemian, like just that term, a boho person. It's really just like earthy in there. So they tend to wear like loose, comfortable clothes, the kind of what we think of like hippies in today's society is very like Kapha, earthy, but I think macrame, I think flowers in your hair, bare feet, long skirts, beads, henna tattoos, like that sort of look, very earthy. And then in terms of energy, grounded, peaceful, calm. Nothing ruffles their feathers. They can really, really hold it together. So they have that earthy energy. Oftentimes they're very into plant medicine because plant medicine is the wisdom of the earth coming through you. So even that is a big allocation of what energy you relate with. So I want to share that first about the doshas, because the doshas are something that you guys are already pretty familiar with. If you listen to this podcast, you've read my book, Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda or Eat, Feel Fresh. But now I want to get into the mystical creatures, which is something I've never shared about in public, but it's something that's really cool to me. And I'm getting so many DMs about this, which is freaking awesome and makes me so happy. But you're opening up to this too, which really shows the shift in consciousness, because before I would be considered crazy to even talk about this stuff. I mean, I still am considered crazy to the majority of people, but you guys are the woke ones, so y'all know what I mean. So we talked a bit about aliens. So with that aliens, it's that outer spacey energy. So I think of, for example, Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son. Like, he's such an alien. Both Willow and Jaden, like, they're almost like they just like came on this earth to like show us a new way of being. So they're very advanced. They're very past their time. The way that they dress tends to be very like cutting edge, modern, not really make sense. Like, you either think it's super cool or you just don't get it. Even their music choice could be like that. Like, what are you listening to? Or like, that is the coolest thing ever. So a lot of times they are sort of like the stylish people of society, because to be like super fashion forward, you have to like not be afraid of like, you know, breaking through like edges of what we're used to. So that's the alien energy. They're really coming forth with information from the future. They're very into technology. Oh my God, they love technology. Like Steven, he's like obsessed. Like, he's like, there's this new like Alexa thing that does this. There's this new like charger that you don't even plug in your phone, it charges it for you. Like, he would even be down to do the microchip, because you know how now they're like microchipping people and putting like that you don't have to go wait in line in the airport and shit. I think that's so dangerous, and I would never, ever want a microchip inside of me, and they're probably going to start tracking people from it, and who knows what they could put into your body, and just anything. Poison. It's poison to put something like that in your body. But look at an alien. An alien's like, that's so cool. It's the way of the future. I would love to have a tracking device in me. So aliens, very into technology, very into cutting edge. They come from the future. Now, let's talk about the fairies. So fairies are very earthy, but I do want to say that they're also very spunky. So fairies are independent, they're airy, they're light, they're free, they follow their heart. They're all about, you know, just being liberated. That's so important for them. And at the same time, they can be feisty. They're very different than angels. So for fairies, I think of someone who feels the most at home in the forest. Like, they just frolic around the forest and they feel great about themselves. They're really uplifting. Like, when they talk to someone, they're like, come on, you can do this. Like, don't apologize for who you are. You got to get out of this. Really uplifting and inspiring for people. So Melissa Ambrosini, who's been on this podcast, definitely fairy energy. Liana, who's been on this podcast, fairy energy for sure. Natalie Miles, fairy energy. I mean, she's literally like reading people's minds, floating around the ethos. So very, very fairy. And you'll start to notice these people all the time. Like, if you just see someone, they're just like almost like connected with earth, and they have this like almost like a light flare to them, that is the fairy vibe going on. So now let's talk about angels. Now, angels are also very airy, but they're not spunky. Like, if you think of Tinkerbell, like Tinkerbell was not like a sweet little angel. Like, she was like, no, Peter, you gotta love me. And if you don't love me, I'm gonna ruin your life. Like, you know, she had that edge to her. Whereas angels don't. They're super pure. They're totally aligned with the light. It's all about being the best person possible. How can I help? How can I be of service? They're the type of people, they'll ask you a question, they'll just sit with you, they'll understand. Like, it has that kapha energy to it too, of really being able to hold space. So they're very patient. They'll never say anything bad about anyone. Very simple, pure, loving. Think like a Mother Teresa vibes, or a lot of like the Kundalini yoga movement is very like angelic. It's like you only wear white and you only say these mantras, and it's very like going into the purity, whereas fairies a little bit feistier. So just wanted to note the difference between those two. So now let's talk about mermaids. So mermaids are the one that I really love, like I associate with the most out of all of them, though I would love to be more of a mermaid. And that's something that I want to do more this year, giving myself permission, that space to be a mermaid, because you may feel like, oh my God, I don't connect to any of these mystical beings at all. And that's actually because you're just not truly connecting with your soul and what your soul wants. So the mermaids, they love the water. They're environmentalists. They're activists. They're always, here to protect the earth, here to protect the children. I mean, you hear me guys talk about like politics and what's going going on all around the world. So they really care about these things. That's very important for them. They're very curious. They will try many different careers in their lives, just kind of dabble around in different places. They're explorative. They're always testing their boundaries of how far can I go. So oftentimes mermaids will end up with adrenal fatigue or end up getting hurt because they're almost like pushing their limits of like, can I take it this far? Can I take it that far? Can I take it that far? Which is almost, if you think about the mermaid underwater who's like coming out of the ocean, and it's like, yeah, they can survive for a little bit in the air, but they can't totally survive after I don't know how long, but they'll have to go back into the ocean. So they're always testing that boundaries. If you think of Ariel in A Little Mermaid, she's like, what's this? What's that? Like that whole song. And that's such an emblematic thing of that mermaid type energy. Curious, inquisitive, wanting to get knowledge on new subjects, wanting to travel, wanting to explore, but also like opinionated. They will stand for what is right. They also really love music and dance. Like that is how they operate. They are very in their bodies. So anything that's like somatic is really important for them. Like if you think of fairy energy, it's more like, woo, floating around, like having fun. Whereas like mermaids are a little bit more like, yeah, like deeper, juicier, that type of energy. There's one that's even more deep and juicy, which I'll share about next, the nymphs. But they have that really just independent energy. And I'll do another podcast all about Lemuria, which is the ancient civilization that many people who resonate with the mermaids are from Lemuria. We take a quick break from this episode so I can share with you an amazing opportunity. Are you interested in having a career focused on health and wellness? Well, if so, then the universe is calling you to become a holistic health coach. I am offering this incredible deal, a discount of $1,500 off my alma mater, Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is the world's largest nutrition school with guest teachers such as Deepak Chopra, Chris Carr, Dr. Hyman, and Dr. Andrew Whale, and so many others. It is split between 6 months of health coaching programs teaching you hundreds of nutritional theories, including Ayurveda, as well as 6 months of business coaching. And as an additional bonus, I am offering a webinar where I will teach you how to use social media to create a thriving career as a health coach. On top of that, I have created a private Facebook community just for the Highest Self podcast listeners who are becoming health coaches to connect with each other, meet up with each other, and support one another on this journey. So if you're interested, send an email over to Sahara, Sahara, at eatfeelfresh.com with subject IIN. Again, Sahara at eatfeelfresh.com with subject IIN. And I will personally send you back the email that will allow you to get a $1,500 off discount, as well as my business coaching webinar and the private Facebook group. I'm so excited for you to begin your journey as a health coach. If you're looking for the perfect holiday gift, I have the thing just for you. I recently came across Vadam teas while looking for a super high quality loose leaf tea online, and I was blown away by their array of 10 different chais alone. And you know I love chai. I ordered it and it arrived in the cutest packaging, literally felt like a Christmas gift to myself. And the tea was the freshest and most flavorful I've ever had. And that's when I knew I had to contact them. Well, turns out Vadam is one of the only tea company that procures directly from plantations and tea growers within hours of harvest, while most companies spend months in that transition time. They package garden fresh in India and ship it all around the world. They've eliminated the middleman, so you're getting the freshest quality tea straight from the farmer. They're fair trade, pesticide free, and pay the farmers a higher wage for their produce. They also educate the tea growers' children, which is really special to me. So you can try them out, definitely get their chai sampler, so freaking good, by heading over to vadamteas.com, VAHDAM teas, TEAS.com. Again, Vadam teas, VAHDAM TEAS.com, and using coupon code Sahara for 20% off. Oprah just listed it as one of her favorite things, so I take Oprah's word for it. So more deep and dark and mystical than that are the nymphs. The nymphs are commonly known as the water nymphs, though I think there are earth nymphs, there are fire nymphs, there are even airy nymphs. There are many different kinds of nymphs. So the nymphs are like this like seductive, feminine, embodied being. And if you think about like the myths of the nymphs, they sing to the men and the men fall in love with them and then they like knock over their boat. You know, they have this like juiciness to them. So I think of Nadine, who was on the podcast for the menstrual wisdom episode. Oh my God, such a nymph. If you just look at her Instagram, tantric.alchemy, such a freaking nymph. Like she's just always in the water, just like connected. She's also a Cancer, which is very water sign and just very sexual, seductive. So she has that energy. So people you see, they post up more sexy pictures. Maybe they're not really smiling. It's more like tempting. That's that nymph energy. So Alexandra Roxo, who I did the Sex Money Magic Masterclass, total nymph, but I don't think of her as a water nymph. I think of her as a fire nymph because she really has that fire energy. She has the red fiery hair. She has that Viking to her as well, you can see, which the Vikings are oftentimes red hair and very bold. She has that side of her too, but she's also very nymph-like. On her picture, she's very seductive and like, you know, any guy would fall in love with her or girl would fall in love with her because she just has that juiciness to her, but it's also a little bit dark and a little bit like, you know, I might start screaming and crying in the middle of sex because I'm a nymph and I can do that. So she rocks that. So nymphs have that just really embodied energy to them. Mermaids, a little bit more independent, curious. I want to try new things. So the nymphs are like, honey, I'll be right over here. La, 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 la. You know, feel me? Okay. So we talked about the fairies, angels, nymphs, mermaids, aliens. Now let's dive into the elves and the gnomes. Now, I want to preface this by saying, like, having elvish tendencies is in no way a bad thing. Like, because sometimes we're thinking elves, like Christmas, like, what does that even mean? And that's so not it at all. I mean, yes, we did the episode about Santa sold shrooms and how that whole thing was part of the people in now common day Finland doing mushrooms and seeing the elves. But people with elvish tendencies, they are very crafty people. They like to be in their routine. They have this like demeanor. They're almost like shorter and like stockier people. They're really good with their hands. They are very joyful. They're just like, this is my life. I'm going to do my job. And they don't have a problem with that. So they're very just like routine. They have a very keen sense of sight and sound and hearing. So that makes them really resistant to extreme nature, illness, disease. So they may live in places that are very cold and be okay with that. You may notice that some of them have pointed ears. I'm not saying that they all do. They're not all like hobbits, but they kind of have that hobbit energy to them. So elves, you've seen elves before. Like these are people, they're just very crafty. Like I feel like they all do like woodworking on the side, very elf-like tendencies. Now the gnomes are kind of like elves, but I think of it as a little different. Like it's so hard to describe like what a gnome-like person looks like, but they have like this almost like a beard and they wear plaid and they also like love woodworking. They're like very sarcastic, hardworking. They make crafty things. They like working with their hands. Like their homes will be like kind of like in a closed place, almost like it's in a cave. They're almost like they like to be by themselves in their cave. They like to be around the same people. So again, think how like earthy and grounded that is. So for example, Lee from America, a friend of mine on Instagram, if you guys follow her, she has a lot of elvish gnome-like tendencies. Her home's covered in plants. She's very funny. She's very crafty. She's very like in her routine, stays in. So those are like very elvish and gnome-like tendencies. Ed Sheeran is a really good example of a gnome. Like just think of Ed Sheeran and you're like gnome. And then also I was just thinking Eckhart Tolle, like the author of The Power of Now, such a gnome. Like, oh my God, even the way that he talks, he's like an elvish gnome. But then I put a picture of them side by side and I was like, literally it's father and son. Just look up Eckhart Tolle and Ed Sheeran. Like they are literally a gnome father and son duo. So you can see one can be like a pop star and one can be like a spirituality author about meditation. Like they can do many, many different things. They don't all do woodworking, but they have that essence to them that like if you just look at a picture and use your intuition without any judgment, just intuitively guess, you'll be able to see they have those tendencies to them. And also I want to say elves can be freaking sexy. So if you think of, say, Rose Ronins, she's an actress, Saoirse, Ronins, Ronans. She's an elf, very sexy and beautiful. So elves can be sexy too. Jennifer Garner, she's like a gnomish elf, very sexy too. But do you see what I mean with the energy? They have this they're almost like petite people, like the shape of their face is kind of square. The color of their hair, the texture of their hair, it's a certain way that you can't even put your words to it, but you know. So, and also, I also want to keep in mind that you're not just one, like different beings will kind of guide you at different times in your life. So as a kid, you may have been super mermaid, but now you're really vibing with the alien, or you could be an alien with some earthy fairy vibes, or you could have elvish hair, or you can have a unicorn side. So let's talk about the unicorn. So the unicorn, these are people who are just bright. They are colorful. They tend to dye their hair different colors. So if you see someone with like rainbow, purple, green, blue, pink hair, that's a unicorn person right there. Like they're just here to bring color into this world. They're almost like the rainbow children. If you know about the indigo children, crystal children, rainbow children, they're very rainbow. They'll wear colorful clothes. They love makeup, I've personally noticed, because they're all about aesthetic beauty, but not so much like I have to look a certain way, just like I have to be totally myself. So they'll do beautiful, cool makeup and fake eyelashes and just have fun with themselves. So a lot of like makeup artists on YouTube are unicorns, and you could see it's like their desire to look different and to be a unicorn amongst the crowd. And that's why you'll see they'll bring in style different hair colors like the teal blue or the silver or the pink. And that's all just their unicorn ways of expressing themselves. So you can look at different people you follow on Instagram. Like, for example, Gala Darling is a girl I know who's very, very unicorn vibes. Normally, you'll be able to tell instantly because they'll be super colorful. My friend Marissa Lace, she's very fairy. I mean, I could go on and on about people. Maybe celebrities could be good. So, for example, Jada Pinkett Smith, she is an elf. Like, you can just see she's an elf. She doesn't have the gnomish tendencies. She's just a pure elf. I don't know where I'm getting this information from. Just something about when I look at her, I see elf. Whereas, fully raw Christina, mermaid, that long wavy hair, that connection with the ocean, and just the way she talks. She also has some angelic vibes to her too. She's very kind and sweet. You can tell she's like angelic. Kendall Jenner, alien. Like she almost doesn't look human. She's so like long, and she's almost like this like reclusive alien lunar personality. I don't know her, but I can just intuitively tell. Christine Bell, the actress, she is very angelic too, like just sweet, kind, loving. If you look at her Instagram, it's a lot of light. Kate Hudson, elf. Even her ears are kind of pointy. So you can see she just has that like elf frolicky, happy, joyful, cheerful personality. So I want to say they can look in many different ways. It's more about energy than appearance. Appearance just helps us see the energy. And again, this is something that we all have access to in our subconscious. There's no right or wrong answer. You may have a different take on these people than I do. Totally fine. So there was another group of people that I was like, I feel like there's this other group that I can't put my name on it. These are like tall, like earthy, strong people, like almost like this like Native American tribal vibe. I was like, what is this vibe? And then I realized what it was, and it was the avatar. So avatars, they're tall, they're very connected with earth, they're tribal, they have this like beautiful ability to sense things, strong leaders as well. So you'll definitely see the avatar. Alexi Panos, who's on the podcast, such an avatar. I mean, she's just like tall, and the way she speaks and she carries herself, so avatar. I also want to say that there are the Amazonian people. These are people that are, more tribal. Like the avatars are very like this is what's going to happen, and like fast and moving through things and just like boom, boom, boom. Whereas the Amazonians are a bit more like connected to the earth and the tribe, the plant medicine. So my friend Allison Charles, who's on the podcast, shaman, rockstar shaman, she has that too. Shaman Dirk for sure has the Amazonian, and also wizard. There are also the Viking people, like the Viking warrior people. These are people, they have that kind of like tough Viking personality. They tend to wear like different browns, or maybe even like faux furs, or they like shave half their head. That's a very Viking look. So oftentimes they even have that like red tinge to their hair, though they could have any color hair, but they have this like strong Viking Nordic look to them. Who else? Okay, so the witches and the wizards. So the witches have like this like darker energy to them. They tend to like dye their hair black. They tend to be interested in just, like darker things like casting spells and rituals and menstrual blood magic, and they're not afraid of blood at all. So I think of Angelina Jolie. She has some witchy vibes, but she's also a nymph. So do you see how she's very like sensual and seductive and like, ooh, come over here, but I might bite you. But she's also a witch, which we can just see. She has that dark vampire-like energy to her. So we could even say vampires are another one, because vampires are more like blood, whereas witches are more like the bruja, like they're more also leaders and supporting women to come together and to connect with the earth's mystical ways. So the witchy energy, and then for men, the wizard energy. So the wizard energy is they're very in touch with magic. These are men that practice magic regularly. They very much believe in the power of their thoughts. And if you think of Shaman Durek or Phil Feelgood, very much wizards, and they identify like that too. Think about Beyonce. She is like an Amazonian angel. So she has that like tall Amazonian structure to her, but at the same time, she's very angelic. I mean, if you've seen the Halo music video, you know what I'm talking about. Like, holy crap, such an angel. Ariana Grande, mermaid. You can see that long hair, those like juicy lips. And if you watch that video, God is a Woman, like it's just very like mermaid connecting to the earth again. You could see those vibes to her, but she also has the nymph too, because she is very seductive and a beautiful singer, of course. So people can be a cross between them. So this was a fun thing I did on my Instagram, but I'd love for you to just try it right now. So I'm going to name a celebrity, and you just intuitively, the first thing that comes to your head, tell me what you think they are. Okay, ready? Madonna. What did you think Madonna was? So I see Madonna as like a witch, but she also has some elf-like qualities to her, and she kind of is a nymph too, but like I see her, at least how she is today now, she's like more of a nymph witch. But she definitely has different qualities to her as well, and people change at different times. But I'd love to see how you guys saw Madonna. Now, what is Selena Gomez? So I see Selena Gomez as an angel with like some mermaid vibes to her. So she's very like light and pure and kind. And I think that she's like now like super religious or something. But I see her as very like the kind and sweet girl. I watched the movie like Spring Breakers or something a while ago, and I remember that was like her character, and you could just tell like that's actually what she's like. So I see angel, you guys can see different things. Michelle Obama. So I see an Amazonian in Michelle Obama. Like she is tall, strong, protector. She has that warrior energy, not so much Viking energy, way more Amazonian. But you could see her as something else. What is Jennifer Lopez? So I see Jennifer Lopez as like a nymph mermaid. So she's very sensual. She's very seductive, but she's also like really, I feel like independent and outspoken and says what she wants. And she has that energy too. So I see her as a cross between a mermaid and a nymph. Would love to know what you guys saw. What is Vanessa Ann Hudgens? She's the girl from High School Musical, if you haven't seen that. Now, I see a witch. And not that that's a bad thing. Witches are awesome. I do podcasts about the witches all the time. But she has, especially today, like this darker style to her, like the dark lipstick, like almost like a maroon. And she had her hair black, and she wears kind of like goth style jewelry. And she's just a little bit badass, a little bit like there's something to her. You can't put your finger on it. Like she's not the girl from High School Musical anymore. So I see some witchy bruja vibes to her. And what is Rihanna? Now, I want you to notice that people can change. You know, if I said, what is Rihanna 10 years ago, you would have been like, mermaid, duh. Like, come, Mr. DJ, pull up the replay. Come, Mr. DJ, won't you turn that music up? So, like, that was so mermaid. It's just like her on the beach with her beautiful, like, blue-green eyes and such a mermaid. But she's really evolved and changed her style and changed her music. And now she has a lot of witch-like tendencies with the nymph. So you could see she's dark. She has a lot of tattoos all over her hands, and they're all black tattoos. And she wears a lot of gothic style jewelry, and she wears a lot of like black makeup, smoky eyes. She has that darker look to her now. Her music is a little bit darker. Like that's her thing. Notice the difference between Rihanna's energy and Beyonce's energy. I would never say Beyonce has the witchy energy. She's like a angel energy. Whereas Rihanna, who I love just as much and is totally awesome and inspiring, has more of the witchy energy. So it's not like one is better or worse. They're just different vibes. But she also has the nymph, very seductive. Now, what is Oprah? I see Oprah as an angel. She's very pure, like the white light. Like everyone just connects with her. She's so sweet. She's so pure. She holds space for people. Her pictures, even I was just on her Instagram, and it was like there's always like white light around her. You can almost like see her aura. It's just like shining in crystalline pink light. So I see angel vibes for her. Now let's try some dudes, because all of these can be dudes. We have mermen, we've got the wizards, we've got the gnomes and the elves. Like they're dudes too. So what do you see Ryan Gosling as? So I see him as kind of an elf. Like he's a little bit like, like spunky. Like I feel like he's like a little bit like sarcastic and has something to say. Like he's not this just like hot guy who with like no personality. Like that's not him at all. I feel like he has like a strong personality, but I feel like he's like very like stable and routine and like, like lives his own life and doesn't care so much about the outside world. That's just the vibe I'm getting from him. So I see elf vibes in Ryan. What is Channing Tatum? So Channing Tatum I see as a merman. So he has that seductive energy too. Like, I feel like he just came out of the ocean and is like, hello guys, I'm Channing. Like he has that merman, but also a nymph. Like, I feel like he's very seductive. I mean, maybe it's because I know that he used to be a stripper and those movies, the dancing movies. So he has that nymph side to him too. But so I would call him a merman nymph. So you see guys can have these qualities too. What is Will Smith? So Will Smith, I see him as an alien just because he's very futuristic. He's very ahead of his time. I mean, just the way he uses social media and like he's just like been a public figure for so long. He just seems to really know what he's doing and really knows how to like resonate with people. So I see that alien, but I don't see him as like sharp and like almost like unemotional as aliens. Like if you think of Anna Wintour, she's very unemotional. She's just like, I'm an alien. Where he doesn't have that. So I feel like he has kind of elvish qualities to him. I feel like he has those ears too, and he's also totally a wizard. So I feel like it's harder for guys, but I would say alien elf for Will. So it's really fun to guess. I mean, I could do this forever. So I would love for you guys to head over to my Instagram page, and I've been doing lots of stories about it. You'll see a picture of a mermaid that I've been guessing people. I'll do another one when this podcast comes out where we can guess each other's just based off of photos. So again, nothing is set in stone. This all comes from intuition. This is all information that we can all access. It comes back to just like releasing the old stories and all the shit that's been put on us so we can just step into fully being ourselves, our creative, spiritual, enlightened, mystical selves. That's what this whole thing is all about. Unlearning rather than learning more. We're unlearning and just coming back to truth. So let me know if you guys enjoyed this episode, if it resonated with you, if you want more stuff like this, leave a review for me in the iTunes store. I would love to see what you thought about this. And if you loved this episode, I would love to share with you the first half of my unreleased book, Eat Right for Your Mind Body Type, which is different from my book, Eat Feel Fresh. It is my unreleased, never to be released book because it is now part of my Eat Right for Your Mind Body Type program. I would love to send it to you absolutely free. All you got to do is leave me a review in the iTunes store, take a screenshot and email it over to me at Sahara@eatfeelfresh.com. Again, take a screenshot of the review and email it to me at Sahara@eatfeelfresh.com, and I will send you the first half of my unreleased book, Eat Right for Your Mind Body Type. Namaste.